Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. We're here today with special guests, Jonathan Clark and Sigh Goldsmith, and they're here to share with us their top podcast, The Container. So what if the depth of connection that you're seeking isn't found in doing more, but in learning how to be fully present with another person? Well, Jonathan and Sigh are here to explore the art of presence, the power of authentic connection, and how simple shifts in intention can transform the way we relate to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. Jonathan Clark is a writer, facilitator, and podcast host living in the Blue Ridge Mountains. His work spans both the relational and occult arts, working to bring a trembling love of God and others into a living practice. Sigh Goldsmith is a podcast host who draws on her background as a mindfulness facilitator, circling guide, and educator to bring a warm, grounded presence to conversations. She's passionate about creating spaces where people feel truly seen and heard, and The Container is an extension of that vision. So welcome to the show, Sigh and Jonathan.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
Hello.
Well, what an honor it is to have the both of you here and to talk about your just top show. I'd love to learn what inspired you both to start this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really began a few years ago. Sai and I kind of met each other going to these authentic relating and circling events. So these are practices that build really deep connection between people. And there's also like this meditative element, this kind of far out, deep connection with yourself in the present moment. And we just fell in love with these practices, and I couldn't help but notice, I suspect Sai would feel the same, that I just looked around my life and everything was getting better. Like my relationship to my family, I got sober. There were just like my career took off. There were all of these ways that I was kind of effortlessly becoming more aligned and happy and productive and like loving and in love with myself and my life. And yeah, so you can imagine we were like, hey, let's learn as much about this stuff as we can. But at the time, we didn't have a lot of money, and there's all these great organizations around the world, but like that teach circling and authentic relating, but we didn't really have the money to go fly off to Brussels for 4-day retreats. So we decided to start a podcast and just bring them on the show and kind of learn. And then the way we would pay that forward is sharing the podcast with everyone who wants to learn.
The decision to, be able to explore this and then being able to like reach out to these incredible facilitators and these incredible leaders in the authentic relating and circling space, and then be creating content for the world was just this really perfect energetic exchange. And then that actually led to us being invited to and like able to participate in those retreats that we were, that we wished we could have done in the beginning. So it just became this kind of magical like exchange over time that resulted in us having all of this incredible training now and being able to then give back to our own local community as facilitators of circling and authentic relating and putting on these events and retreats here locally. So it's just kind of come full circle over time. And then we continue on with the podcast, and it just continues to evolve and like be more in line with like similar to our spiritual paths or our personal development. It sort of mirrors that, and then so it's just wonderful.
There's so much there I want to unpack, but I think the first thing to start with is circling. That was a new term for me, and I'd love for you to share what that means.
Yeah, circling. So, if you look up the term, there's a lot of practices that might get that term. So another term we use is surrendered leadership, which comes from transformational connection. And yeah, that's like a lot of jargon that if you're not in the game, that's not very useful. But I like to boil it down. What we do boils down to this very simple invitation of come meet me in the present moment, right here, right now, and let's connect here. So we create this space where people come, they meditate a little bit, we might do some eye gazing, we kind of settle in to the present moment together, and then we start the circling practice. And instead of talking about our personal histories, like where we went to school, what we do for work, how we got in bad traffic on the way over to the events. Instead of trying to like take care of one another and be like, hey, everything's all right, man, and like try to do all of this polite smoothing over. Instead, we talk about what's actually arising in the moment. Like right now, just talking to you for this interview, I noticed that I'm having some kind of energy come up in my stomach, like sort of a rising energy. And I notice, I notice I have like little swirls of energy going up around in my head. And I also notice I'm just having a good time. Like I'm like right now in this moment, I'm like excited. I notice I'm like trying to do a good job explaining circling, and there's like that's in the mix too. So that's kind of circling. I'm just like being present about what is going on for me, and it's strange. It sounds so simple, but it's actually like radically different than how we relate 99% of the time.
Yeah, and my sort of 60-second elevator speech of what is circling is it overlaps a little bit with the way Jonathan described it, but if we think of meditation, for example, as a return to an object of focus, like the breath, for example. So when we notice that we've stopped paying attention to the breath, we just kind of gently remind ourselves to come back to that object of focus. And with circling, the object of focus is the relational space. So it is like what is happening right here between us, in us. And so it's this toggle between what is inside of me and what is like right here outside of me in the space that is with these people in this place at this time. And that is the practice, is that return to that focus of the relational space of that object of focus. Yeah.
I love your description of it because it's so practice oriented, and that's really the special sauce really gets going when you realize it's a practice and it's a path.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for taking the time to share that. And I think we all are kind of feeling that way when you're explaining how you're feeling. It's like, I feel that too. So it kind of has me wanting to dive into this a little bit deeper. So, how can someone begin this practice in a meaningful way, in a way that really, as you talked, that shaped and evolved and changed their life in such a profound way?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Sai and I both have big, silly grins on our faces because that's the stuff I think is yeah, if you live in a city of any kind of size, you can probably find a group that either does authentic relating or circling, I would say.
Hmm.
Wouldn't you say, Sai?
Yeah, in a meetup group or maybe like a Craigslist ad or a newspaper article, like there's probably it's being promoted in some way, maybe a flyer in the local coffee shop.
Yeah. If you live in a place that doesn't have that, you can get online offerings through like transformationalconnection.com. They have beautiful online offerings. And the online spaces are like not going to have it's not the full soup of being in the room together, but it's a great place to start. And once you're started, it's funny. I think of these like these paths, these journeys, these trips we go on as so um it's so listening based. Like I'll early on I was in a circle, and I realized as I was telling someone how I was feeling, I realized that I was lying. Like I was kind of coming up with something that seemed plausible, and I realized, whoa, I'm not actually really that in tune with what is coming up in me. And so one of my earliest arcs was like listening to that and then spending a lot of my time trying to address that thing I heard in the circle. And so we have these little experiences, these little, we call it getting popped. Like this little thing happens, and then all of a sudden you're crying, or you're like, your head is spinning. You're like, wow, have never realized this really essential thing about my experience. Um, and then you take that with you in your life. You take it out of the circle, and you can kind of work them. And yeah, I really want to hear from Sai.
Yeah. I think on a super practical level, and we even without, having an event to attend, something that anyone can do starting right now is what I call the 4-point check, or the pause. So, just taking a moment, and this is something you can do alone. It's a mindfulness practice where you're checking in on 4 things: the quality of your breath, the feeling state, like labeling the feeling state that you're experiencing. Maybe it's anxiety, or maybe it's joy, or maybe it's fear. Any sensations that you feel in your body. So checking in on what sensations am I having right now, and then any like impulses or desires, maybe like, and just checking in on those 4 areas and not judging them and not saying, oh, this means this, but just kind of labeling them and noticing them, and doing that a bunch of times a day, like maybe 3 times a day at first, and then adding in more times a day. So that you're starting to see what patterns overlap. Like, oh, when I'm breathing really fast, my mind is racing and I'm having this sensation, that I'm labeling as anxiety. And just that, like, kind of attention, that putting that attention on it actually starts to kind of release and separate those experiences just enough so that they have like some room to change if they need to change. Maybe they don't need to change. I don't know. So that would be a suggestion I would have.
Well, thank you for taking the time to dive in that. What are some of the topics that you guys explore that build these just really deep connections with others in the universe?
Oh man, we have so many topics. A recent episode that I think we were really proud of was around the intelligence of trauma, actually. So that some of these developmental traumas that we experience in our youth are actually these super intelligent ways of relating and looking at it from like a more positive, optimistic light than from the view which trauma is often, looked at, which is that there's something wrong with me, or I'm broken, or this is what is holding me back from, um, living my best life. So that is a recent episode that was really, really great. We did a whole series on around death and confronting what was called the developmental stages of death with this wonderful author Susan Campbell. And then a lot of episodes are just have basic tools that we use in authentic relating practices, which are often like different games and activities. So we talk to some of the facilitators and creators of those games and activities, and just sort of unpack those practices on a deeper level.
Yeah, and lately we're even wanting to involve like not just how we relate to one another, but also how do we relate to existence, to as you said, even in the question, like to the universe. And something that we're really finding is that actually this, you can circle your connection to If you go on a hike, you can circle your connection to the trees around you. You can circle your connection, just to being in the room, being in existence, and that starts to open up this really spiritual dimension, which, um, I will speak for myself. Just in so much of our culture today, it's empty. There isn't much of a spiritual dimension, and a lot of people have a lot of wounds around the spiritual dimension, especially like there's wounding around religion. There's wounding around like how we connect to each other and even talk about this and get shared reality, like so much of in the I live in the United States, but I know people all over the world are living in these societies that really don't have this collective sense of like, yes, we're here and there are things that are important that we all agree on, and all of that sort of, that gets very big. We're talking about stuff that might seem pretty far. If you're listening to this on your drive, um that might seem pretty far out right now from where you are, but actually, it's everywhere. It's the soup that everything sits in and cooks in. And so, yeah, seeing that in terms of how we relate to each other is actually, yeah, it ties in how you talk to your romantic partner to how you pray. It's like that far out, that wide of a net.
It's very interesting how all these converge. And I know that one of the topics that you both dive into is consciousness, spirituality, and this present, but also AI. So, how does this all come
Mhm.
together?
Well, yeah, we weren't expecting to be a podcast that ever addressed AI. Um, yeah, and then we had on this guy Leif Hansen, who's kind of like a digital mystic. He was kind of exploring how he's been using these new AI tools, and the more we kind of like cracked that open, the more we realized the big fear I know I have in my heart is that AI is going to change everything. Like people, like what does work mean when we have robots and AI doing so much stuff, and what does, yeah, like what is our role when so many facets can just be done more quickly and cheaply with AI? So many facets of like job, productivity, economics, like that realm of life, that kind of pentacles earth realm of life. And all of a sudden it really became clear that like AI is actually making possible a new way to have like our connection with each other and with existence, and like with spirituality can be the center now. I know for me, so much of my life has been focused on worrying about bills or like going to work, or yeah, all of these things that like there is this opportunity we have now where that can really radically shift and not be the center of so many of our concerns. Yeah, I wonder, and it's like imagining that future. It requires us to right now be imagining that future and kind of hoping and praying and walking our way into the future we want to see, where AI leads to this flowering of mystical, beautiful union with each other, and it sounds utopian, but we have this such a Promethean tool of AI that like utopia is on the table, you know?
Yeah, if AI is handling all of the stuff that, we spent 38 hours of our work week doing before, then we have all of this time freed up, in this perfect utopia that's being described, to actually like refocus on each other and community and what is happening right here, right now, again, in the present moment together. And AI's got it. Like AI's got all of the other stuff that was that we thought was actually living. It turns out was easily offloaded onto chat doesn't mind doing that stuff for me. And then I have time to be here with, my children in our home and putting all of this, those like really thinking about things that I wasn't thinking about when I was out of the house for 40 or 50 hours a week.
I noticed that I had this like little mourning or grieving feeling hearing you say that about these hours spent outside the home when we were yearning for family, or yeah, I just like had a moment of grief. Mm.
Oh, I'd love to dive into just what makes the container such a different space for people to connect at.
I think rather than, we often do the interview format, either that or it'll be Jonathan and I having a really rich and interesting conversation. But we really strive to hold these conversations that are more like the emerging unfolding of a relational interaction versus having a list of questions that we're checking off, and much more being here with you in the relational space in the podcast versus doing a podcast. It's being a conversation. And that over time, I think we've noticed has really led to these just incredibly, slightly different than your run-of-the-mill conversations. I've listened to guests that we've interviewed on other podcasts that they've gone on, and you can really tell the quality of difference because of the way that we are coming back and checking in with ourselves and checking in with what it's like to be here right now.
Yeah, there's something so I think even when we first started, I think one of the core sort of agreements we had, and a real tenet that felt like it was really important to hold on to, is whenever we're having a strong experience, we don't ever hold that back. There's we really want to let go of this inner voice of like, it's supposed to sound this way, or yeah, that like, oh, we need to appear like experts, or we need to, I need to be whatever, like I can, hear that voice of that teacher from fourth grade who thought you're supposed to act this way. Rather than trying to suppress that stuff, it like that is included in the conversation. So it's so, yeah, it leads to weird fun and kind of far out moments. And I also, as I'm just saying that, I'm feeling like this happiness come up that like we decided on that and we've like stuck to it. It feels, yeah, I'm proud. I'm
Yeah.
really happy about that.
Well, it's so impressive to have that space where people can come together. And so, who is this space for? Is it for folks that have had years of practice and are looking for deeper connections? Is it for people who are not really sure what they're looking for? Who is this for?
Oh, yeah, I think it's for anyone who is seeking deeper connection with other people. And I think most people I meet are right now in this day and age, seeking deeper connection. Um, and people who want to develop their own consciousness, people who are yearning for more like deeper spirituality in their lives, and then even people who don't, it's like seekers that aren't quite sure what they're looking for. Maybe it's just the very early stages of like, oh, something, for me, when I found authentic relating, I was going through a significant shift in my life, and I had, it was what, 2022. So still we could say in the early aftermath of COVID, where I had been sort of alone and just, not dealing with not having any social connection. And I went on a meetup and, thought I want to just see what is out there. I had no idea what I was really looking for. And then So if you're a person like that, that's like, I have this yearning, I don't know what it is. I think the container could help you with that.
Where can our listeners go to connect with the both of you and learn more about the container?
I love that. The container is available on YouTube. And we're also available on Apple, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts, you can find the container. It's the purple logo. You can also go to thecontainerpod.com, and that has all of our links to our YouTube and to the podcast feed.
Well, Sigh and Jonathan, thank you both so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Marianne. It was really, really awesome.
Yeah, I noticed I'm coming away. Delighted. I've been having so much fun.
Well, thank you, Sigh and Jonathan. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your top podcast, The Container. Make sure to visit thecontainerpod.com for more information and to be part of their community. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.